There's renewed calls for a national crackdown on electric bikes after the deaths of two people over the weekend. A man was killed when he collided with a 14-year-old boy riding an e-bike on the New South Wales Central Coast, and a teenager has been charged with manslaughter after a pedestrian was killed in Perth. Professor Geoff Rose is from the Institute of Transport at Monash University, and he joins me now from Melbourne. Good afternoon, Geoff.
Good afternoon, Kath.
Why do you think we're seeing these shocking fatalities involving e-bikes and e-scooters?
There's far too many of them, and it disgusts me that we're not seeing some more concerted government action. The problems are twofold. First, we've got non-complying vehicles out there on the road network, and secondly, we've got irresponsible use. We need different actions to address each of those underlying problems.
OK, let's talk about the non-compliance to begin with when you look at solving the problems here. Plenty of these bikes are imported. Is that a good starting point to look at the regulation of the importation of these bikes?
It certainly is. And prior to 2021, we were doing a much better job of keeping the door closed to vehicles that didn't comply with our regulations. In 2021, the federal government made a change to the rules around imports of e-bikes, and that has opened the proverbial barn door. First thing we've got to do is get the federal government back to the table to take action. It's in their court to do so. That will stem the flow. We then need to address the non-compliant vehicles which are currently out there on the network.
Yeah, and what about just how easy is it to, upgrade some of these bikes that make them non-compliant?
In many cases, very easily. It can be done through changing a setting in the app. And again, prior to 2021, importers had to confirm that the bikes could not be tampered with. We've not only allowed non-compliant vehicles to come in, but they can then be adjusted either by retailers or by the user.
So are we talking about, the bikes that you can go and hire, if you're in a city somewhere, or are we also talking about, these fat bikes that we're seeing a lot of kids and young adults riding as well, or actually any ages riding as well?
Very good distinction to draw, Kath, because we can be almost certain that every one of those share e-bikes are compliant vehicles. And the reason for that is the operators would not run the risk of operating a vehicle that was not compliant. The problem with non-compliant vehicles is exclusively to do with privately owned e-bikes.
OK. So what about then, Geoff, when it comes to road rules and bike rules, speed, where they're allowed to ride, etc.? Who's responsible for making those and enforcing those?
Again, a good distinction, because now we're into the realm of the responsibility of the state governments. And I believe we need to take a couple of steps. We need to have clearer and more easy to enforce regulations so that police are better engaged in enforcing the regulations. I look to what Queensland's done with their e-scooter regulations, and I think there's a lot of potential there. They defined speed limits by different type of facility for footpaths versus bike paths versus shared paths. And then police go out with a speed gun and they enforce. And it doesn't matter whether somebody's riding an e-bike, an e-scooter, or a conventional bike. If you exceed the speed limit, you get a ticket in the same way that we enforce road safety for motor vehicles.
Yeah, so then is there a problem, Geoff, that you have a patchwork of rules across the country with state and territories all being a little bit different to one another?
That is a factor. The other problem that we've got is that a major part of our current rules focus on the power of the motor, not its maximum speed or its operating speed. And I think that is a distraction. It's also a disincentive for police. It's extraordinarily difficult for police to be able to try and enforce the power of the motor. But operating speed is something that they already do effectively with speed guns, and they can do a better job and more easily do it on facilities where these vehicles operate.
OK, so we focus now on the actual bikes themselves. What about the riders? How important is it, and how do you go about educating riders?
That's a very good point as well, Kath. In addition to clearing up our regulations and enabling police to be able to do effective enforcement, I think there is a responsibility to do better education and encouragement. The education part is important. In Queensland, the police have started to go after the parents who are buying non-conforming bikes for their children. And I think that this education needs to be not only the user, but also the people that are making the purchasing decision.
Some really good points there. It's been wonderful speaking with you, Professor Geoff Rose from the Institute of Transport at Monash University. Thank you.
Thanks, Kath.